Hi, welcome back to 1e4 part 3. In this chapter, we're going to take a look at the Taimanov with a6. Actually, all Taimanovs are with a6, but this is the one where black goes a6 before going queen c7. So let me jump straight into it and elaborate on what I mean. e4, c5. Of course, the Sicilian, knight f3, e6. This is not the only move order to get this. You can also start with knight c6 as black will go d4 in any case. e6, d4, cd, knight d4, knight c6 first. Now, if not a6 here, this is called the Khan Sicilian. We have a chapter for that. There we go, c4, grabbing space. Knight c6 is different. Now c4 is less attractive as black will get quick play with knight f6 and bishop b4 without wasting any time on a6. So here we should develop the knight to c3, and here black has a choice. They can, they can transpose to the 4 knights, Sicilian with knight f6. Go for the weird Scheveningen type setup with d6 that's covered in the Scheveningen chapter. And the other two moves here are the queen c7, the so-called Taimanov Sicilian. At least that's how I call it. It's also, there is some confusion. There's also the name Paulsen, and some people use Paulsen for Khan. It's very, very confusing, but I call this Taimanov with queen c7. And 5a6, I call the Taimanov with a6 first. In some cases, it can transpose, but it doesn't actually have to. If you play bishop e3, queen c7, we will be back to our Taimanov chapter where we can play queen f3. But after bishop e3 first, black can play knight f6, trying to delay queen c7. And after queen f3, also there's the option of bishop b4, I believe, delaying queen c7. So basically, better not to go for it. Instead, I prefer the most principal move, knight c6, because as soon as black played a6, after knight c6, bc, this move has been useless and potentially even harmful, somewhat weakening the b6 square, not contributing at all by any means. I should, of course, note that dc is horrendous. We trade queens, develop the bishop, and black just created all these weaknesses for no reason. So, of course, bc is the way to go. And here, I recommend the good old bishop d3, developing the piece, the most standard and natural way of playing. Also extremely trendy are the queen transfers to g3 via d3 or f3. Very, very principled. Fascinating lines there, but I've decided finally to give the old-fashioned solution here. I think it's easier to play, just develop the bishop castle and see what we do later. So here black has a choice already. The main line is developing the pawn, and here the d5, knight f6, and bishop e7. Developing the kingside first, but there are also other ways of playing. Black can play queen c7, trying to delay d5 for now. Here I like a principled move, queen e2. We are intending to meet knight f6 with e5 now. So black should go bishop b7. Now we castle d5, and here bishop g5 is very strong. And bishop is hitting nothing, but it will eventually be useful there. It's very active. We intend f4, rook a1. For example, knight f6, f4, bishop e7, rook a1. And after h6, bishop h4, castle. e5 is very strong. Knight e8 takes on e7, queen e7. And in this kind of closed structures, we will see multiple versions of them. But a common theme is that knight from c3 should leave. Sometimes it heads to the queen side with knight a4. But more often than not, it's going towards the king side with knight d1, heading to f2 or e3. And in this case, it's what we do. Knight d1, after c5, just play b3. Don't blunder the bishop to c4. And after g6, we have a choice, knight e3 or knight f2. I've selected knight e3 as the main move. Intending to push on the king side with g4, f5. Knight f2 I also like, and the advantage of knight f2 is that after h5, we have knight h3, knight sent to this juicy square on g5. Also very tempting. All in all, queen c7, not the best move order. Queen e2 is a good punishment. d5 is the main move. Castle. And here again, a choice, knight f6 or queen c7. Here queen c7 is also a little dubious, rook e1. If knight f6, then we have bishop g5. Very similar to what we had just looked, but a little bit different. The rook is already on e1. So after bishop b7, we play queen f3. Queen often develops to f3 in these positions. Bishop e7, and now e5. Knight d7, bishop e7, king e7, queen g3. Queen, of course, well placed here. Guards the pawn, also targets the g7 pawn. After c5, we don't allow black a lot of play with queen g7, as then rook can come to g8 and black gets counterplay. So we should go b3 instead. A standard move to slow down black's play on the queen side in the center here. And after h5, h4, we block this move h4 here. And after king f8, black's trying to somehow make sense of the king. The problem is not so much the king as this rook on h8 stuck here. After rook d1, rook h6, black's trying to pretend that the rook has some purpose, but after knight b1, which I really like here, usually, as I mentioned, knight's heading somewhere, but here b1 is a very creative route. It's going via d2 to f3, excuse me, eyeing a very, very beautiful square on g5 there. Knight bishop b7 is another way to play. Now I play queen f3 once again, and after bishop d6, a nice tactical sequence, a very unusual one. e5, bishop e5, and queen to h5, and suddenly the e6 pawn is falling. So bishop d6, rook e6. Black should play king f8 here, but this is of course not good. We just return. King has been misplaced, and the problem is this rook on h8 in the corner. So for example, h6, bishop d2, knight f6, queen h4. And after c5, knight e2, black's struggling to make sense of their piece placement. The bishop has this f5 square available in case of c4, and black cannot make sense of this rook on h8. Yeah, rook 8, knight g3 is how the line continues. Very pleasant position for white here. The main move, however, is 8, knight f6. We play queen to f3. Now, rook e1 is a big main line as well, but we are delaying the development of this rook. It might be very useful on f1. In fact, in many cases, as later we might want to push f4. So I recommend queen to f3. Now, bishop e7 is the best move by far. Bishop e7 has also been played. Andreikin played it against me, trying to delay bishop e7, hoping that the pawn on g7 won't be hit yet with queen g3. But after rook e1, black anyway has to develop bishop e7 and not queen g3, because Andreikin played h5 here. I played h3, which is good enough, but even stronger is bishop g5. There's no tactic here. After h4, I believe I can just take, and then if the knight moves somewhere, I can take on e7. So this is just good for white. h5 doesn't make sense. Actually, it was a painful game for me. I've got a very good position here. Also after h3, it was a winning position at various points in the game. And unfortunately, I lost the game, and it was very important because it was second Grand Prix tournament. Actually, the first Grand Prix, and I got very far, and this was a decisive, rapid game against Andreikin. So not the best memories here for me, but I did prepare well for the game, and I'm sharing with you some of my preparation in this very chapter. But not always does the opening outcome correspond to the result of the game, unfortunately. Chess is still complicated. Converting is very important. That said, let's cheer up and look at 11th short castle, bishop h6. This is a thematic idea. After bishop h6, we send the knight back to e8, and then we go back to f4. Bishop is well placed on f4, but the knight on e8 is quite passive. Here we'll probably play on the queen side with knight a4 and c4. And black is very passive. This sort of hanging pawns in the center could prove to be a weakness in many of the cases. And if black tries to go knight f6 back, very important idea is bishop c7, queen c8, and knight a4. Knight coming to b6 here. Knight bishop 7 is the best move. Now we go e5, knight e7, and queen g3. And this is a very interesting idea. The old-fashioned way is to go g6 in such a position. But now after bishop h6, we are really enjoying these dark square weaknesses. For example, if black tries to trade the bishop, we trade. Bishop f8 takes, knight e2. c5 can be met with c4. And after d4, knight f4 is a very cool idea. Before pushing f4, we improve the knight. And the following sample line is very instructive. By the way, of course, knight e5 can be met by knight e6. Nice tactic. And then bishop b7, rook a to e1. For example, a5, h4, a4. Now knight h3, very fancy. And after h6, f4, the knight is surprisingly well placed on h3. In case of h5, black has to deal with knight g5. And otherwise, knight can keep jumping via f2. Very good knight there on h3, surprisingly. A very instructive little sample line. If queen b6, greedy approach, we go knight d2, give black this b2 pawn, king in the center. It's not enjoying the action there. Just play c3, queen b8, and now I like bishop c2. A fancy little move. If queen e5, now we can take, and the bishop has walked out of knight takes d3, and we just win a piece here with bishop g7. That's the point. And if knight takes e5, not knight e5, it's just bishop g7, the same thing. I also mentioned that it's possible to play knight d4 after queen e5, bishop f4, queen h5, knight c6. Black is also struggling here for a reply. So queen b6 is very dangerous. c5 is a normal move here, move 12, b3, bishop b7, or k1. And again, we keep this rook on f1. For f4, it will be very useful. This is the whole concept that I'm recommending, this whole queen f3, g3 idea based on this, keeping this rook on f1. Very clever stuff. If bishop f8. I also mentioned queen c7, and that black cannot castle long after knight d1, because after knight d1 long castle, we have queen f4. The f7 pawn falls. In f5, we can take en passant and later collect the e6 pawn. So bishop f8, and again, takes f4. We have seen these positions in many different versions, and every time I'm drawing different arrows, just giving you more options, more ideas. Knight b1 also, again, possible. Knight d2, knight f3, we have seen this before. Also f4, queen e7, now h4, intending h5, and after h5, knight d1, the knight, as we know, is heading towards g5 square, knight f2, knight h3. And at some point, this f5 sacrifice is looming. So all these positions are very dangerous for black. The modern way of playing these positions is 11 king f8. I should also mention a fancy move, queen c7. It's actually a clever move. Idea is that after q1, g6, bishop h6, black has this move f6, and we are entering an endgame. But the endgame is slightly better for white. So also, instead of bishop h6, we can go for bishop g5. So again, black can go for f6 or trade bishops, leading to a position we have seen a lot in this chapter. So both very similar, because in both cases, black can play f6, and then we take queen g3, ag, knight f6. And we have this endgame. We should play knight a4. Then we go c4. Black has some soft pawns here, more pawn islands than us. We have 2 pawn islands. As you know, this pawn islands is an important metric. If black has 3 pawn islands, it means there are more weak pawns. After c4, okay, c1, white appears to have a small edge, which I really like. And white won actually in the game. Taimanov and Pritchett, both legends of the game, but it's played in 2013 and at the European Seniors Championship. So, of course, past the peak of the players, but still some classy opening play there by Taimanov. 11 king f8, that's a very principled way. It's a modern way of playing. Black doesn't mind to lose castling rights, but doesn't weaken the king side with g6. Here we go knight e2. And this is another point behind queen f3, queen g3 variation. In a system where white has queen on g4 and rook on e1, knight e2 is not possible because this pawn is hanging. So this is another little finesse. Now white's actually doing very well. After queen c7, we go f4. Rook on f1 once again proves useful. h5, h4. We don't hesitate to stop this advance of the h-pawn. Don't give black rook air on the h-file. Knight c5, played in the correspondent game. Bishop e3, knight d3, cd. Queen d8, collecting the h1, but they sacrifice at knight d4. Bishop h4, queen f3. In the core game, black went queen h3, but queen f3 is much more dangerous practically, because if black goes for the natural bishop d7, f5 here just wins. I mean, it doesn't win obviously, but I mean, it wins, but it is not immediately obvious that it wins. And so it's easy for black to fall for this. The position is just really, really bad here. Instead, queen e8 is better, and then after rook c1, again, black is struggling for a move since bishop d7 is followed by f5. And otherwise, we collect back the pawn and keep the attack for free. Again, it's important that this rook on h8 is stuck here, staring at its own pawn. That's queen c7. h5 is how they usually play in a position like this. Makes more sense to do it here. We cannot play h4 because the square is protected. Now we go knight d4. Black has concrete issues here. For example, bishop b7, and if queen c7, we go rook e1. So for example, bishop b7, rook e1, knight c5. There are 3 games in the database, 2 of which are correspondence. But interestingly, the move that the computer shows here is still a novelty. That's a beautiful move. Bishop to g6, I really love it. Of course, the idea is that if black takes it, we go for b4. This pawn needs protection, so we regain the knight, and of course the king is shattered here completely. The entire king side is shattered. So king g8 can be played after bishop g6, but now we got the bishop out of the way, but keep control of the e4 square. Very nice. And so we can play b4 here. Knight e4 is how the line goes. Now we take, and play rook to d1. Queen has to move. If h4, we play queen g4 simply. So queen c7, and now h4 is very strong. For example, c5 is what computer recommends. Now we take, bishop e3, and again, black's got this issue of the king side. Bishop is also quite dumb. Very nice position. King h7 and c4. Black king can never relax. Queen g5 is always there, and also black's b7 bishop is very poor. Rook b1 is coming. A very, very pleasant position, which is also better for white. And so this brings us to the end of this small but important chapter. I think it's very important to study these type of positions, to remember that the knight always has to reroute somewhere, often via b1 to d2, sometimes via e2, or d1, even to f2, h3, as you remember. So important ideas there, keeping the rook on f1, f4, sometimes consider the sacrifices with f5. And another important idea is this knight e2 after king f8. After h5, just knight d4. Very nice stuff. And I hope will be useful for you. So thank you for watching this chapter, and see you in the next one.